The Indian Army cannot repeat the mistake of hurting our civilians. And there is going to be justice that is going to be done for the families of the deceased who were killed while in custody of the Indian Army. The Union Defence Minister Rajnath Singh said this when he visited the family members of the civilians who were killed while being detained by the Indian Army over the anti-terror operations that the army was conducting. Quickly taking a look at what Rajnath Singh said.
मैं आपको आश्वस्त करना चाहता हूं कि घटना की गंभीरता को देखते हुए जो भी आवश्यक और जो भी उचित कदम है वह उठाने की भरपूर कोशिश की जा रही है। हमारे लिए हर सैनिक बेहद महत्वपूर्ण है और हमारा एक सैनिक मैं मानता हूं वह हमारे परिवार के सदस्य के समान है। इस प्रकार की घटनाओं को रोकने में सिक्योरिटी और इंटेलिजेंस एजेंसी दोनों ही महत्वपूर्ण भूमिका निभाते हैं और लगातार उनके द्वारा भी यह प्रयत्न जारी है कि उनकी यह भूमिका और भविष्य में ज्यादा इफेक्टिव हो। उसके लिए जो भी शासन की तरफ से सहयोग की आवश्यकता है अथवा भविष्य में भी जो शासन के सहयोग की आवश्यकता पड़ेगी उसके लिए हम सरकार का खजाना पूरी तरह से खुला हुआ है।
The government of India has taken strong, swift action by immediately sending the defence minister of our country to Poonch to take stock of this sensitive situation. Action needs to be taken, and action must be seen to have been taken, to send out this message to the people of Kashmir that the government and the Indian Army are there for their protection of its people. A huge mistake has been committed. There are 3 civilians who were detained by the Indian Army. They were thrashed, they were tortured, and they were left to die. The video of this bestiality has gone viral. Locals have come out in protest. People of Kashmir are angry, they are scared. There needs to be strong action taken, and it needs to be seen to be taken to set a strong example and to assure the citizens that they are valued, their lives are valued, and justice will be done to them surely. I'm going to start my conversation and getting in a comment from the former DGP of Jammu and Kashmir, Kuldeep Khoda. Sir, in such a sensitive situation, and there have been these instances where a precedent has been set, that there were attacks, there were killings of the civilians who were in the custody of the Indian Army years ago in the past in Kashmir. It brings back bad memories of what happened on the 22nd of December. And when Rajnath Singh comes up and reprimands the Indian Army personnel, saying that a repeat of the mistake of hurting the civilians will not be tolerated, how can damage control be done here?
The Defence Minister visit to Rajouri has been very timely, and this is something great about the present government. They react to a developing situation very quickly to take care of the adverse fallout and do the necessary damage control. Unlike in the past when things were allowed to drift and allowing the things to take their own course. This is exactly what previously happened in 2010 when a similar incident happened in Machud, where 3 civilians were killed and the situation was allowed to drift. It resulted in a court of inquiry later on and a word of imprisonment to the concerned officers. But that was done only after the huge damage had been done. Now, in this case, the government has learned from the past experiences and they have initiated a staff court of inquiry against the RR commander, a brigadier level officer, and the other connected officers. And the visit of the defense minister has been very reassuring to the civilians there. And the reports suggest that the civilians are very satisfied and very happy about the response which government has shown at political level to this situation. But what is now needed is the court of inquiry should move very quickly, transparently. Here, all those who are aggrieved by the incident and identify those responsible for it and have the matter quickly resolved and action taken against those involved in it, so that people really believe in it, that the visit was not purely a customary visit, but it was followed by the action which was appropriate
Okay.
and correct.
Okay. Okay. Amit Raina, he is a Kashmiri Pandit. He is a resident of Kashmir. And Amit, understanding from you the ground situation, there is anger, there's frustration of the people. There were protests that were also taking place. And when our Union Minister, when the Chief of Army Staff visit Jammu and Kashmir, visit Poonch area, they meet the civilians, they speak to them, they speak to the family members of the deceased. And action has been taken at the army level. There is inquiry that has been initiated. There is also at this point of time the demand of the detention of these army personnel. There is also compensation that has been provided by the government of India as well as by the army to the kin. But is this enough?
See, one has to look at the history in perspective. For 75 years, the security forces, which includes the Indian Army and Jammu and Kashmir Police, have played a significant role in keeping Pakistan away. 4 wars have been fought, and for last 35 years, 8,000 security personnel have attained martyrdom fighting terrorism in Kashmir. And in last 4 years, we have seen significant amount of progress both in peace and development in Kashmir. The people of Jammu and Kashmir have understood that they need to keep away from elements which disturb peace in Kashmir. The youth which pelted stone in Jammu and Kashmir, the youngsters which were part of separatist movement have understood that they were victims of propaganda and false narrative. Now, with all this development, the enemy is desperate. Pakistan is desperate, ISI is desperate, the terrorist groups operating out of Pakistan and in Jammu and Kashmir are desperate. The deep state of Pakistan is desperate, and they will do every possible action to disrupt peace in Kashmir and provoke our soldiers, our security forces to do actions which again bring back a distrust in our security forces. And it is important for our security forces to not fall in this trap. Unfortunately, what happened on December 22 is something which should have not happened. And while the government of India and government of Jammu and Kashmir has moved into an immediate damage control, and Rajnath Singh ji said that while we cannot bring the dead back, we can deliver justice. The justice delivery needs to be quick and efficient. As of now, we haven't seen that happening. We have only seen transfers happening. We need to see court martials happening and whatever the legal procedures are in place that happen, that people of Jammu and Kashmir do not lose trust in the security forces which have contributed so significantly in Jammu and Kashmir.
General Dwivedi, the fact that this is the government of India, the Home Ministry, the Defence Ministry, who have taken the swift action of sending the Defence Minister, of sending the Chief of Army Staff, taking stock of the situation, does it also speak loud of what the intent of the government is?
Well, Megha, first and foremost, it's very unfortunate that this incident has taken place, and let me assure that these are aberrations because the Indian Armed Forces have very clean and impeccable record, and I have operated in all the areas, whether Punjab militancy or J&K terrorism or Northeast insurgency. You know, we have ethos, and those ethos are that any human right violation, there is a zero tolerance, and in case such a aberration takes place, the actions have always been very swift and very stern, and that's what the Indian Armed Forces are known for. Second issue is that what Home Minister has only reiterated, because the people are always close to our heart, and after all, we are operating in these environments for whom? For the Indian citizen, for the people of Jammu and Kashmir, or for Northeast. So therefore, every effort on the part of Army is to ensure that civilian brethren are not inconvenienced, are not, put into situations where they have to suffer. And to that extent, winning heart and mind of the civilian brethren is the foremost. And that need not be questioned. because I'm little taken back that Home Minister said that we need to be closer to the civilian population. I feel that we have do lot of good work, lot of civic action programs, and to that extent, again, the Indian Armed Forces record is impeccable and I think enviable and admirable.
Right.
But I like to make 2 points here. First and foremost, such aberrations do take place, but Indian Armed Forces will take very quick and stern action and assure the civilian brethren that such a thing is only an aberration. And second point is the civilians are always very close to our heart, and every effort is made that they are not harmed and they are protected from the environment. And
Okay.
the last point is
Okay.
that
All right.
this is the
General Sudhakar ji, there was also a lot of controversy that revolved around AFSPA. And this has been a problematic issue that has been raised time and again. The reason this is also likely to become, in fact, it has become a political plank that is being used by regional political parties. Like I said, damage control has to be done. Damage control is being done. And as Amit Raina said, that there are going to be forces that are going to try to manipulate the locals, that are going to create situations, that are going to build traps for our armed forces, for our police forces to then be in a difficult situation, how to deal with it. But restraint needs to be shown. And this is the message that has also come from our Defence Minister.
Megha, good afternoon. Thank you for getting me to your show. I must compliment the previous co-panelists for having articulated the perspectives on the subject in a very comprehensive manner, and particularly Mr. Amit Raina. It's very heartening to hear somebody from the valley talking so supportively, despite the misfortune or the unfortunate mishap that is taking place. There are very far and few people who will understand the compulsions of the Indian Army and the security apparatus unless they themselves have had an experience on the ground. Let me assure the viewers that Indian Army is the only army in the world. It is one of the largest armies, which is people's army. It is not a foreign army, it is people's army. It is for the people and is by the people. And what we talk about the democracy is also can be well spoken about, articulated for the Indian Army. So therefore, to say that a mistake has happened, must be allowed to happen, is incorrect. Army is known for one thing, that it is a very, very ruthless as far as be it a custodial death or any kind of error which takes place, is very punitive in its redressal and disposing of the cases in a very quick time frame, which I'm sure, having had experience in the Victor Force, Avantipur, and half of my service, like General Dwivedi, has been in the valley floor. So I would say that the needful is being done. The Chief of the Army Staff has rushed to the spot. The Defence Minister has come. He's visited the families who have have suffered the losses, and they have taken suitable measures, and these suitable measures need not be visible. There are very stringent steps which are taken by the army. Such kind of excuses will never be accepted. It has never been accepted in the past. That is one part. Megha, I would like to share something very important. Our viewers need to understand that there is a big design and there is a big plan in place. And this plan in place is being handiworked by none other than China. Rajouri-Poonch is in the south of Pir Panjal ranges. Everyone in the world knows that the northern border is holding, from India's side, a formidable defense. Chinese are feeling very uncomfortable, whether it is Manipur or Doklam or Rajouri-Poonch. Each of these three places, they're actually in proximity to bottlenecks. They have the potential. If they fall into the hands of the enemy, they can cut off very narrow connective points into the valley floor or to the further higher up to the northern border. The bigger design, as per my assessment, is that they would like to carry out some activities so that the troops who have been pulled out from low profile or dormant sectors because of improved situation in past decade or 2 decades, they are brought back from northern border back to these places.
Right.
That should, Indian army should not fall prey to it. I understand.
I agree with you, absolutely. So how do we work this out? How can measures be taken? Because there have been hundreds and hundreds of our army jawans who have been killed, and particularly in the Poonch Rajouri sector. Now those dense forests, the ravines, and these natural caves that have become the habitat of these terrorists that are infiltrated into Kashmir, into this particular area. Now this entire stretch has become the haven of terrorists in Jammu and Kashmir. We have been able to weed out these terrorists from rest of the Jammu and Kashmir, and this is the area that is a strangle point. This is an area that is a challenging situation, challenging point for our Indian Army forces to fight out. But here comes the point about how the overground workers who are locals, who have been in cooperation, in coordination with these terrorists, who are hiding underground, then becoming informants, becoming spies, becoming eyes and ears of these terrorists, and then allowing for this brutality happening of our Indian Army soldiers to be attacked, to be bombed. Their convoys have been attacked, their convoys have witnessed a number of these bomb blasts, and they have been killed ruthlessly. So Kuldeep Koda, how can we ensure that the civilians are protected, the terrorists are rooted out, and at the same time these overground workers that are in operation in conjunction with these jihadis and terrorists are also then identified, detained, put behind bars and convicted for their actions?
Mega, the network of overground workers in Valley was much more strong than what it is or what it was in Poonch and Rajouri. And it has been effectively neutralized to a large extent in Valley. The key to the to effective functioning of the security forces is that there has to be an excellent coordination on regular basis between the army, the police, paramilitary forces, and the intelligence agencies on ground. In Kashmir, this has been operating very systematically and on a regular basis and on basis of need also. The result is that the outcome has been excellent. The security forces have dominated Kashmir Valley very effectively. The terrorism levels are very much down, and the overground network, and including the flow of funds, has been neutralized to a huge extent. Now, Poonch and Rajouri, that way the presence of overground workers has been much less, and it will not be a difficult thing to overcome this challenge which has emerged during last 1 year or so. The coordination needs to be improved. The brigade level and the division level and at the corps level, the coordination has to be very effective, and it has to be meaningful and result oriented. And regarding the civilian cases, the aberrations, the human rights violations have been few and far between. What is required is that the officers, especially at the lower levels, at the company level or so, they need to be sanitized properly. I know the army has regular course, especially the RR is inducted through a short course on human rights before they are put in place in terrorist infected areas. And they need to be sanitized about the preservation of human rights while operating.
Okay.
And in Kashmir is a standing example of that. The results are obtained much better while observing the human rights than by violating the human rights.
Okay, all right. Amit, then it's a sensitive situation as we talked about it, and also a dilemma for our armed forces, of our security forces. But there's another aspect of creating awareness amongst the locals, giving them jobs, giving them the ease of living, giving them the freedom to study, to become entrepreneurs, to start up businesses, to see economic reform, to see economic development in their households. the more prosperity that the government, the economic resources bring about in the valley, bring about in Rajouri-Poonch, will then ensure that these individuals, these youth that get brainwashed by the terrorists coming in from the Pakistani side, the number of people who are going to be involved in these terrorist operations are then significantly going to be reduced, as has an example been set in other parts of Kashmir.
Yes, I agree with you. See, one needs to understand that Jammu region, especially the Rajouri-Poonch belt or the Kishtwar belt, has largely been neglected by the previous government. It was areas which were neglected by previous state governments, previous political parties, and in recent years, especially after the formation of a union territory, a special focus has been given on these regions by providing them jobs, by bringing in reservations, by building up infrastructure. But one also needs to understand that the terrain with Pakistan or the Pakistan occupied Jammu and Kashmir in Rajouri-Poonch is much more difficult. It is much more prone to infiltration. There are many areas where you can walk into, which is on the other side of LOC. So it becomes difficult for the security forces, especially the Indian Army, to control the infiltration. Second, what has happened is that there has been radicalization across Jammu and Kashmir at higher levels. The government of Jammu and Kashmir needs to find out the people who are out spreading radicalization there. The madrasas, which are high on radicalization, need to be shut down. The people who are coming from outside Jammu and Kashmir only to radicalize the people of that area need to be pulled out. We also need to have very high focus on the Rohingyas which are settled in Jammu region, because we have found that Rohingyas are also actively involved in being informers of the terrorists. So there has to be a multi-pronged strategy. And as Kuldeep was saying, the unified command which used to exist earlier, I don't think it exists now. Those meetings need to start back, especially in the Jammu region, because we are now seeing Pakistan getting more active in Jammu region than in Kashmir region, finding it they are out to attack now security forces more than civilians, and they find the Jammu region much more easier for.
Okay, General Dwivedi, how do we handle the turmoil and unrest that is then created by the political class, the regional leaders? We talk about the PDP, we talk about the National Conference, who are of the opinion that Article 370 needs to be restored, who are of the opinion that dialogue is the key to reduce terrorism in the valley, who have continued to support separatists, to support radicals in the valley, to create unrest and ensure that they remain in power. And also, there is election on the anvil in Jammu and Kashmir, perhaps in September 2024. How can all these factors be brought into view, and how can we resist the locals from getting brainwashed or influenced by these parties, by these powers that have been played a significant role for the past several decades for the situation that Jammu and Kashmir finds itself in?
Well, Megha, I think you have flagged a very important point. But unfortunately, ironically, our political parties do not understand that national security should come above the politics. When you start politicizing the national security, then the problem arises, and this is exactly what has happened, especially in those disturbed areas, because for the narrow political gains, these political parties exploit the population, and even at times they have greater sympathies with the dispensation across the borders than their own people. I think here the people need to be sensitized that political parties should not be allowed to put the nation interest, at stake. And that is point number one. Secondly, I think the political parties also need to be sensitized by the administration, by the other agencies, that please do not meddle with the national security. As far as national security is concerned, I think everyone should be on the same page, and that's point number one.
Okay.
Second issue is we need to ensure that nexus between the terrorists, nexus between the political parties and the forces across is broken, and to large extent it has happened with the abrogation of Article 370. I think that was a major turning point where these political parties have got dented, and I think they have lost the certain amount of clout. And thirdly, from the military point of view, last point, that we need to look at the whole strategy of fighting proxy war with Pakistan. We cannot fight it out on our own soil. We have to go across, because the terrorist training camps, there are terrorists all waiting there. And if we keep fighting on our own side, I think we will be only containing. And that's what has happened for the last 3 decades. We have not been able to defeat the proxy because we are fighting on the own side of the LOC. We need to do a lot of groundwork across as well.
General Sudhakar ji, then a quick point before I wrap up this discussion. There have been, unfortunately, extreme steps that the Indian Army has had to take, as was the incident that was reported on the 22nd. How do we ensure that the lives of our army jawans are not lost, and ensuring there is peace, prosperity and tranquility that is maintained in the valley?
Megha, excellent point you have raised. First and foremost thing is that we need to win the hearts and minds of the people, our own people. That should be the start point. While there are very well-defined, demarcated kind of lines, layers of lines, I would address your question by saying that we need to focus on the external factors which General G.G. Dwivedi was trying to highlight. We need to look at the primary cause, which is the tap which is causing the flood in the room. Is that tap meriting some kind of closure, or you want to empty the room which is getting flooded? The tap is none other than ISI. It's about time that the ISI, we need to make noise, call it out, and go in for banning ISI in the international order. One. Number two, the staging camps which are there, far and quite a few of them across the Rajouri-Poonch. I am told by the rough count, there are almost about 3,500. I can't believe the figure. There are as many as these terrorists who are waiting. Jash-e-Mohammed, Lashkar-e-Toiba, Mujahids. In fact, so much so, there is a hand-in-glove tacit operation which is going on understanding between all these outfits with the Al-Qaeda as also ISIS element. It needs to be seen and verified to actually corroborate the issue before we highlight the issue. Third and most important, Megha, is just allow me 2 more points, is the LOC. The line of control has to be defended in a formidable manner. The line of control appears to be so susceptible and vulnerable now that it can be breached anytime. The surveillance capability has to be enhanced, and our grid system of deployment of anti-infiltration has to be established sooner the better. Last but not least,
quickly,
the internal one.
Yeah.
The synergy of operation between the police, the security forces and the army must be jointly operated, and operations.
Right. Also the point that was made by Kuldeep Khoda. All right. On that note, I'm out of time. I thank all of you for joining me on the telecast. But it's a challenging task, particularly in the country being able to control and bring to book what the Pakistani generals and the ISI have been committing for the last several decades now, to then spread terrorism, infiltrate terrorists into Kashmir. How do we end that? A question that has been raised time and again with no concrete solution thus far. There will have to be cooperation that will have to be shown by India's allies. And can India turn the tide in its favor and bring back Pakistan into the FATF list, which Pakistan has squeezed out of because of the support of the vested powers who are in interest of ensuring that terrorism continues to harm India on the northern front.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.